Commander Zethkar of the Vortanian Empire stared at the tactical display with growing unease. The holographic battlefield showed impossible movements, human soldiers advancing through terrain that should have been impassable, maintaining formation under fire that would scatter any reasonable military unit. "Replay Sector 7 Alpha," he commanded, his four arms gesturing at the display controls. The scene repeated. 12 human soldiers moved through a bombed-out urban district on Kepler 442b, where his own forces had established what they considered an impenetrable defensive line. These humans, who called themselves Marines, had somehow breached 3 separate kill zones, eliminated advanced Vortanian weapon emplacements, and secured their objective in under 2 hours. "Sir, we've received the post-action report from the human commander," announced Lieutenant Kixtau, her voice carrying the same confusion that plagued the entire Vortanian military staff. Zethkar's primary eyes focused on his aide, while his secondary pair continued monitoring the replay. "What does it say?" "The humans classify this unit as standard infantry, sir. They list no special designations, no elite training markers, no enhanced genetic modifications." Kixtau's tentacles writhed with bewilderment. "According to their records, these are ordinary soldiers." The commander's chitinous exterior darkened, a sign of deep distress among his species. For 3 cycles, the Galactic Defense Coalition had been studying human military capabilities. Every engagement revealed the same disturbing pattern. Humans performed feats that other species reserved for their most elite warriors, yet consistently reported these achievements using their basic military units. "Request clarification from a human liaison," Zethkar ordered. "Ask them to identify which of their forces they consider special or elite." Within 1 standard galactic hour, the response arrived. Captain Sarah Chun, the human military attaché, appeared on the main communication screen. Her expression carried the patient tolerance of someone explaining something obvious to a confused child. "Commander Zethkar, I understand your confusion," Chun began, her voice crisp and professional. "The unit you observed was 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, a standard infantry formation. If you're looking for our special forces, you'd be referring to units like Delta Force, Navy SEALs, Special Activities Division, or similar organizations." Zethkar felt his stomach acid increase production. "These Marines are not your elite forces." "Correct. They're regular infantry, well-trained, certainly, but not special operations." Chun consulted a tablet. "The mission parameters you described would typically be assigned to conventional forces. Our special operations units handle more complex scenarios." The Vortanian commander exchanged glances with his staff. If these Marines were ordinary soldiers, what capabilities did human special forces possess? The question sent ripples of concern throughout the Coalition's military hierarchy. "Captain Chun," Zethkar continued carefully, "could you provide specifications for your standard military training protocols?" Chen's smile carried a hint of pride. "Certainly. Basic training for Marines lasts 13 weeks, covering physical conditioning, weapons proficiency, tactical movement, first aid, communications, and basic engineering. After that, they receive specialized training for their military occupation: infantry, artillery, logistics, aviation, and so forth. 13 weeks. Zethkar's auxiliary brain processed this information while his primary consciousness struggled with disbelief. Vortanian elite units trained for 3 full cycles, nearly 2 standard years, to achieve capabilities that humans apparently developed in less than 4 months. "What about physical requirements?" asked Major Veltar, the Coalition's physiological warfare specialist. "Marines must complete a 3-mile run in under 28 minutes, perform 3 pull-ups, and 44 crunches in 2 minutes, Chin replied. "Those are minimum standards. Most exceed them significantly." The Vortanian staff fell silent. Their own elite forces struggled to match those benchmarks, and these humans considered them basic requirements for ordinary soldiers. Chun continued, seemingly oblivious to the stunned silence on the other end of the transmission. "Physical fitness is just the foundation. Marines learn small unit tactics, urban warfare, defensive operations, reconnaissance, and force protection. They train to operate independently for extended periods without resupply or communication. Independently? Kixtal whispered. Vortanian military doctrine required constant communication with command hierarchy. The concept of soldiers making tactical decisions without oversight violated every principle of their military philosophy. Of course, Chen confirmed. Marines are expected to adapt to changing battlefield conditions, make tactical decisions appropriate to their rank, and complete mission objectives even when separated from command structure. Initiative and independent thinking are core components of their training. Zethkar's primary concern crystallized into horrifying clarity. These humans weren't just physically superior. Their basic military training produced soldiers capable of independent operation, tactical flexibility, and decision-making authority that most galactic species reserved for senior officers. Captain Chun, he said slowly, if these are your regular forces, could you describe the capabilities of your actual special operations units? Chen's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. I could provide general information. Special operations forces undergo significantly more intensive training, anywhere from 1 to 2 years, depending on a unit. They specialize in direct action, special reconnaissance, counterterrorism, foreign internal defense, and unconventional warfare. Unconventional warfare? Major Veltar leaned forward. Asymmetric operations, guerrilla tactics, working with indigenous forces, psychological operations, sabotage, activities that fall outside standard military engagement parameters. The coalition staff exchanged increasingly worried glances. They had been studying human regular forces and finding them superior to their own elite units. Now, they learned that humans possessed an entirely separate tier of warriors trained specifically for scenarios beyond conventional warfare. How many special operations personnel does humanity maintain? Zethkar asked, though he dreaded the answer. That information is classified, but I can tell you that special operations represent a small percentage of our total military force. The vast majority of human military personnel are conventional forces like the Marines you observed. Small percentage. Zethkar's calculations suggested that if humans could deploy thousands of soldiers with capabilities matching galactic elite forces, their special operations units represented a threat beyond current modeling parameters. Chen seemed to sense their discomfort. Commander, is there a specific concern prompting these questions? The Coalition and humanity have maintained positive military cooperation. No immediate concern, Captain, Zethkar replied carefully. We're simply trying to understand human military structure for better coordination purposes. Understood. If you need additional information, I'm available for further consultation. Chen's transmission ended, leaving the Vortanian staff in tense silence. Major Veltar spoke first. Sir, if their regular soldiers exceed our elite capabilities, and their special forces exceed their regular soldiers. I know, Zethkar interrupted. Compile everything we've observed about human military performance. Include physiological assessments, tactical analyses, and operational outcomes. Flag it for immediate review by Coalition Command. Should we recommend any changes to our current military protocols? Asked Kixtal. Zethkar studied the tactical display once more, watching human Marines accomplish in hours what would have taken his forces days. Recommend? No. We need to completely reimagine how we approach military training, organization, and deployment. These humans have redefined what ordinary soldiers can accomplish. As a staff dispersed to compile their reports, Zethkar remained alone with the tactical display. Somewhere in human space, special operations units train for scenarios that conventional forces couldn't handle. If conventional human forces could already outperform galactic elite units, what capabilities did their true elite possess? The question would haunt Coalition military planning for months to come, as they slowly realized they had been comparing their finest warriors to humanity's everyday soldiers. Admiral Korvex of the Andromedan Fleet studied the casualty reports with increasing bewilderment. The joint training exercise on Titan 7 had been designed as a simple peacekeeping scenario, multiple galactic species working together to establish security in a simulated conflict zone. The humans had sent what they called National Guard units. According to their documentation, these soldiers were part-time military personnel who maintained civilian careers while serving 1 weekend per month. The Andromedans had expected them to perform adequately in support roles, but had assigned primary combat operations to their own elite Void Marines and the Centaurian Battle Priests. Instead, the human National Guard had completed every objective 12 hours ahead of schedule. "Show me the breakdown again," Admiral Corvex commanded, his crystalline fingers dancing over the holographic interface. Lieutenant Xeris activated the tactical review. The human units, designated as 2nd Battalion, 456th Infantry Regiment, secured all primary objectives, eliminated 17 simulated enemy positions, and established forward operating bases in terrain our scouts had marked as extremely difficult. "These are their citizen soldiers?" Corvex asked, using the translation the humans had provided. "Correct, sir. They maintain regular civilian employment. According to their files, this unit includes teachers, construction workers, mechanics, computer technicians, and farmers." Xeris paused, checking his notes. Their commanding officer operated a restaurant when not on military duty. The Admiral's crystalline structure darkened with confusion. Elite Andromedan Void Marines underwent 5 full rotations of continuous training and genetic optimization. These humans held civilian jobs and trained occasionally, yet had outperformed every military unit in the exercise. "Request detailed performance metrics," Corvex ordered. The data materialized in holographic columns. The human National Guard unit had achieved 94% accuracy in marksmanship trials, completed obstacle courses in times that matched Andromedan elite standards, and demonstrated tactical coordination that impressed even the Centaurian Battle Priests, warriors who prided themselves on psychic battlefield awareness. "Sir, we're receiving a communication from Colonel Martinez, the human National Guard commander," announced Communications Officer Vextal. The main screen activated, revealing a middle-aged human with graying hair and a weathered face. His relaxed demeanor contrasted sharply with the rigid military bearing exhibited by other galactic officers. "Admiral Corvex, I wanted to thank you for hosting this exercise," Colonel Martinez began. "My soldiers found it educational, though they were hoping for more challenging scenarios." "More challenging?" Corvex felt his internal temperature fluctuate. "Colonel, your forces performed exceptionally well. Are all human National Guard units trained to these standards?" Martinez chuckled, a sound that somehow conveyed both pride and modesty. "Well, 2nd Battalion is one of our better units, but they're certainly not unique. Most Guard infantry battalions would perform similarly given the same mission parameters. Colonel, could you clarify the training requirements for National Guard personnel?" "Sure. After basic training and initial job training, which all our soldiers complete, Guard members attend monthly drill weekends and annual training periods. We focus on maintaining readiness for both military deployment and domestic emergency response." Corvex processed this information. Monthly training sessions, annual exercises. These humans achieved elite performance levels with training schedules that wouldn't qualify as adequate preparation for Andromedan support personnel. "What about physical standards?" asked Major Kilneth, the exercise coordinator. "Standard Army physical fitness test," Martinez replied. "Push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run. Most of my soldiers exceed the minimum requirements, but we're talking about basic fitness standards, not enhanced performance protocols." The Andromedan staff exchanged glances. Their own elite forces required surgical enhancement, genetic optimization, and pharmaceutical supplementation to achieve comparable physical performance. "Colonel Martinez," Corvex continued carefully, "if National Guard units represent part-time military service, how would they compare to your active duty forces?" "Active duty units generally have more recent training and higher readiness levels," Martinez explained. "They drill more frequently, have access to newer equipment, and spend more time on advanced tactical scenarios. But in terms of basic soldier capabilities, there's not a huge difference. A soldier is a soldier. A soldier is a soldier." The phrase struck Corvex as fundamentally incomprehensible. Among Andromedans, military capability varied dramatically based on rank, training level, genetic optimization, and specialized enhancement. The concept that baseline soldiers could perform at elite levels challenged every assumption about military organization. "Sir," Xerus whispered, consulting his tactical pad, "we're receiving after-action reports from other exercise participants. The Vortanians are requesting clarification about human military classifications." Corvex nodded. "Colonel, one final question. In your assessment, how would National Guard units perform against what you consider your elite forces?" Martinez scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Depends on the mission. For conventional infantry operations, Guard units might move a little slower, but would accomplish the same objectives. Our elite forces, Rangers, Special Forces, SEALs, they handle different types of missions entirely." "Different how?" "Direct action against high-value targets, special reconnaissance deep in enemy territory, counterterrorism, hostage rescue, unconventional warfare, missions that require specialized training and equipment beyond conventional infantry capabilities." Corvex felt his worst fears confirmed. If human part-time soldiers exceeded galactic elite capabilities, their actual special forces represented a threat beyond current comprehension. "Colonel, thank you for your time. Your soldiers performed admirably." "Appreciate it, Admiral. If you need any additional training assistance, we're happy to help. My soldiers enjoy working with Coalition forces." The transmission ended, leaving the Andromedan command staff in contemplative silence. Major Kilneth spoke first. "Sir, should we revise our tactical assessments of human military capabilities?" "Revise." Corvex studied the exercise data once more. "Major, we need to completely recalibrate our understanding of human warfare. These citizen soldiers outperformed our elite forces in every measurable category. What do we report to Fleet Command?" Admiral Corvex considered the implications. The Coalition had been planning joint operations based on the assumption that human forces would provide competent support while galactic elite units handled primary combat operations. This exercise proved that assumption dangerously flawed. "Report that human military capabilities exceed all previous estimates," he decided. "Include recommendations for immediate revision of joint operation protocols." "And their special forces?" Corvex studied the tactical display showing National Guard soldiers accomplishing objectives that should have challenged the galaxy's finest warriors. "Request additional intelligence gathering on human special operations capabilities. If their part-time soldiers can do this, we need to understand what their professional elite forces are capable of." As the staff began compiling reports, Admiral Corvex remained focused on one disturbing realization. The Coalition had been comparing their elite forces to human, everyday soldiers, and finding them wanting. Somewhere in human space, special operations units trained for scenarios that would challenge or exceed anything the galaxy could field against them. The balance of military power in the galaxy had just shifted dramatically, and most species didn't even realize it yet. Lieutenant Xerus approached with a final piece of information. "Sir, Colonel Martinez left a message. He wanted us to know that if we're interested in observing truly challenging training scenarios, his unit would be participating in a joint exercise with human active duty forces next month." Corvex considered the offer. Part of him wanted to understand the full scope of human capabilities. Another part feared what such knowledge might reveal about the galaxy's military future. "Schedule the observation," he decided. "We need to know what we're dealing with." General Thaxmore of the Regellian Supreme Command watched in growing horror as the classified recordings played across his private viewing chamber. The footage, obtained through carefully negotiated intelligence exchanges, showed human soldiers in action during what their military called routine deployments. The first recording showed a unit designated as 82nd Airborne Division conducting a rapid insertion mission on a contested moon. These soldiers, whom humans classified as regular paratroopers, had jumped from orbital altitude, landed in hostile territory, and secured 3 strategic objectives within 6 hours. Rigelian shock troops would have required 2 full planetary rotations to accomplish the same mission. The second recording was worse. Human infantry soldiers from something called the 10th Mountain Division had operated in Arctic conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes. They moved across frozen terrain, engaged enemy positions, and maintained combat effectiveness for 12 consecutive solar periods. But the third recording shattered every assumption General Thaxmore had held about warfare. A single human soldier, identified only as Staff Sergeant Williams, 3rd Infantry Division, had held a defensive position against overwhelming enemy forces for 14 hours. Wounded, cut off from support, low on ammunition, he had continued fighting using improvised weapons and tactics that demonstrated creativity under pressure that Rigelian military academies taught as theoretical concepts for senior officers. How is this possible? Thaxmore muttered, his 4-chambered heart racing with implications. His aide, Colonel Vixnala, consulted the intelligence briefing. Sir, according to human military documentation, Staff Sergeant Williams is a standard non-commissioned officer. 5 years of service, standard infantry training, no special designations. No genetic enhancement, no surgical modifications, no pharmaceutical augmentation. None reported, sir. Human military medical records indicate standard biological baseline with conventional fitness training. General Thaxmore activated his secure communication system. Give me Director Kethval at Intelligence Command. Priority override. Within moments, the scarred face of Rigelian intelligence appeared on the screen. Director Kethval's expression carried the weariness of someone who had been fielding similar calls all rotation. General, I assume this concerns human military capabilities? Director, I need confirmation. Are we certain these recordings show human regular forces? Absolutely certain. We've cross-referenced unit designations, personnel records, and training documentation. Everything confirms these are standard military formations. Kethval said, General, we need to discuss what our deep reconnaissance has discovered about actual human special operations forces. Thaxmore felt his secondary stomach clench. What have you learned? 3 solar periods ago, we detected what appeared to be equipment failures on Kepler 438c. Communication blackouts, sensor anomalies, unexplained system malfunctions affecting both our monitoring stations and those of the Andromedan fleet. Equipment failures don't warrant intelligence briefings. These weren't equipment failures, Kethval continued grimly. Follow-up investigation revealed signs of deliberate infiltration. Someone had accessed our facilities, copied classified data, and departed without triggering any security protocols. Impossible. Our facilities use quantum-lock security systems and psionic detection networks. Nonetheless, it occurred. Physical evidence suggests a small team, perhaps 4 to 6 individuals, penetrated 3 separate high-security installations across a 48-hour period. Kethval's expression darkened. They left behind a single piece of evidence. A new image appeared on the screen. A small metallic object with human writing. What does it say? Courtesy of U.S. Army Special Forces, Kethval translated. Have a nice day. The casual tone of the message chilled Thaxmore more than any threat could have. These humans had penetrated the galaxy's most secure facilities and left behind what amounted to a polite calling card. Director, what do we know about this U.S. Army Special Forces? Very little. Human cooperation on military intelligence remains limited. We know they exist separately from regular forces, undergo extensive training, and specialize in what humans term unconventional warfare. Have we requested additional information through diplomatic channels? General Vextar attempted that approach last rotation, Kethval replied. The human response was interesting. How so? They provided a complete organizational breakdown of their conventional forces, unit structures, training programs, equipment specifications, deployment protocols. But when asked about special operations, they simply said such information was not available for coalition sharing. Thaxmore understood the implication. Humans freely shared information about military forces that exceeded galactic elite capabilities, but kept their actual elite forces completely classified. The message was clear. What the galaxy had observed represented only the baseline of human military power. Director, I need threat assessment projections. Already compiled, Keth Val confirmed. If human regular forces exceed our elite capabilities, and their special forces exceed their regular forces, current galactic military doctrine becomes obsolete. Recommendations: immediate revision of coalition defense protocols, enhance cooperation with human forces while they remain allied, and absolute avoidance of hostile action against human interests. The last recommendation carried weight beyond its words. The Rigelian Empire had conquered 17 star systems through military superiority. Now they faced the humbling realization that their finest warriors were inferior to humanity's everyday soldiers. One more thing, General Kethval added. Our intelligence suggests that human special forces operate in small teams, usually 4 to 12 individuals. Yet these teams accomplish objectives that we would assign to full battle groups. Small teams. Consider the implications. If a squad of human special forces can accomplish what requires hundreds of our soldiers, how many such teams does humanity possess? And what happens if they decide coalition interests no longer align with human interests? General Thax Moore terminated the communication and sat in contemplative silence. The recordings continued playing, human soldiers accomplishing impossible feats with casual competence. Each scene reinforced the same terrifying conclusion. Humanity had redefined the boundaries of military capability. His communication system activated with an incoming priority message from the Coalition Defense Council. General Thaxmore, we're convening an emergency session to discuss recent intelligence regarding human military capabilities. Your presence is required immediately. Thaxmore suspected every galactic military leader was receiving similar summons. The Coalition was finally beginning to understand what they were dealing with. As he prepared to depart, one final thought occurred to him. The humans had shared detailed information about their conventional forces while keeping their elite forces classified. But they had also demonstrated those elite capabilities just enough to send a clear message to galactic intelligence services. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of human military doctrine wasn't their superior capabilities. It was their strategic patience. They had allowed the galaxy to underestimate them while quietly demonstrating that such underestimation could be dangerous. The humans weren't just superior warriors. They were superior strategic thinkers who understood the value of controlled revelation. And that combination suggested a level of military sophistication that went far beyond individual soldier capabilities. As General Thaxmore departed for the emergency session, he wondered if the Coalition was about to discover that they had been thinking too small about human military power. Perhaps the question wasn't what human special forces could accomplish. Perhaps the question was what human strategic planning had already accomplished while the galaxy focused on tactical demonstrations. The answer to that question might determine the future balance of power in the galaxy. Supreme Chancellor Melthara of the Galactic Coalition convened the Emergency Military Council in the highest security chamber aboard the orbital command station. Representatives from 12 major species filled the circular chamber, their various forms of anxiety evident despite different physiologies. The floor recognizes Director Kethval of Rigelian Intelligence, the Chancellor announced. The scarred intelligence officer activated the central holographic display. Honored representatives, we face an unprecedented situation. Our three-rotation analysis of human military capabilities has revealed fundamental flaws in our strategic assessments. Images materialized above the conference table. Human soldiers in action across various deployments. Each scene demonstrated capabilities that exceeded galactic elite forces. These recordings show what humans classify as standard infantry, basic paratroopers, and routine peacekeeping forces, Kethval continued. Performance analysis indicates these regular soldiers exceed our elite units in every measurable category. Admiral Corvex of the Andromedan Fleet leaned forward. Director, what have we learned about their actual elite forces? That's where our situation becomes critical, Kethval replied grimly. 3 rotations ago, human special operations forces penetrated our most secure facilities across multiple star systems. They extracted classified information, left no evidence of their methods, and departed without triggering any detection systems. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. General Thaxmore added, "The only trace they left was a message, courtesy of U.S. Army Special Forces. Have a nice day." "A threat?" asked Representative Zixtal of the Centaurian Assembly. "Urs, Toxmu replit." A demonstration of capability with no hostility implied. They showed us they could penetrate our security while maintaining diplomatic courtesy. Chancellor Melthara absorbed this information. What threat assessment do our strategic analysts provide? Director Kethval gestured, and new data replaced the combat footage. Current modeling suggests human military capabilities exceed coalition defensive parameters by factors we're still calculating. If conflict arose, our forces would be outmatched at every level. However, interrupted a new voice, that analysis assumes human hostility, which current evidence doesn't support. All attention turned to the speaker, Ambassador Sarah Chun, the human military liaison, who had requested permission to address the council. "Ambassador," Chancellor Melthara said carefully, "we appreciate your presence, but this session involves classified military assessments." Chun smiled politely. "Chancellor, with respect, very little discussed here qualifies as classified from humanity's perspective. We've been monitoring coalition intelligence gathering regarding our military capabilities." The admission sent waves of shock through the assembled representatives. Chun continued before anyone could respond. "We understand your concerns. You've observed our conventional forces and drawn conclusions about our military potential. You've experienced demonstrations of our special operations capabilities. You're now trying to determine whether humanity represents a threat to coalition security." Admiral Corvex found his voice. "And what is humanity's position on that question?" "Our position is that the question itself reveals a fundamental misunderstanding," Chun replied. "You're analyzing our military capabilities through the lens of conquest and territorial expansion. That's not how human strategic doctrine operates." General Thaxmore activated his recording systems. "How does human strategic doctrine operate?" Chun gestured toward the holographic displays, still showing human soldiers in action. "Those forces you've been studying, they're not conquest armies. They're stabilization forces, peacekeeping units, humanitarian intervention teams, and defensive formations." "Humanitarian intervention," Representative Zixtal inquired. "Human military doctrine prioritizes protection of civilian populations, maintenance of interstellar stability, and defense of democratic institutions," Chun explained. "Our special operations forces that infiltrated your facilities, they weren't gathering intelligence for invasion planning. They were assessing coalition security vulnerabilities that could be exploited by actual hostile forces." Director Kethval's expression shifted. "You were testing our defenses?" "We were identifying weaknesses that enemies might exploit," Chun corrected. "The intelligence we gathered has been compiled into security recommendations that will be shared with your governments through appropriate diplomatic channels." The chamber fell silent as representatives processed this revelation. Chancellor Melthara spoke carefully. "Ambassador, are you saying that human special forces infiltrated our most secure facilities as a security service?" "Among other purposes, yes," Chun confirmed. "Human strategic planning operates on longer timescales than most species consider. We analyze potential threat vectors decades in advance and take preemptive action to prevent conflicts rather than simply preparing to win them." Admiral Corvex leaned back in his chair. "The message your forces left, 'Have a nice day,' was that a threat or a courtesy?" "It was an apology," Chun replied. "Our teams needed to verify their infiltration success, but leaving no evidence would have been more alarming than providing polite acknowledgement of our presence." General Thaxmore struggled with the implications. "Ambassador, if human forces can penetrate our security so easily, what prevents you from simply taking control?" Chen's expression became serious. General, human history includes extensive experience with imperial overstretch, occupational governance challenges, and the long-term costs of forced administration. We've learned that controlling territory requires exponentially more resources than defending it. So you choose not to expand? We choose strategic partnerships over territorial acquisition, Chen clarified. Human doctrine focuses on creating stable, prosperous, democratic allies rather than conquering and administering subjects. Representative Zixtal voiced what everyone was thinking. But, Ambassador, your military capabilities could enforce any political arrangement you desired. Could, yes, Chen acknowledged. Should know. Human strategic analysis indicates that voluntary cooperation produces better long-term outcomes than enforced compliance. We prefer to invest our military capabilities in protecting the system that generates prosperity rather than expanding the territory we must defend. Director Kethval consulted his tactical assessments. Ambassador, our intelligence suggests human special forces operate in very small teams. How many such teams does humanity maintain? Chen smiled. Director, that information remains classified. But I can tell you that human special operations planning focuses on strategic effect rather than numerical advantage. A single team accomplishing the right objective at the right time can prevent conflicts that would require massive conventional forces to resolve. Chancellor Melthara felt a new understanding emerging. Ambassador, is humanity suggesting that your military serves as a stabilizing force for the entire galaxy? Not suggesting, Chancellor, demonstrating, Chen replied. Human forces have been quietly preventing destabilizing conflicts for several rotations. Pirates eliminated before they threatened shipping lanes. Terrorist cells neutralized before they acquired dangerous weapons. Potential coup attempts discouraged through selective intelligence sharing. Without coalition knowledge or consent. Admiral Corvex asked, would you prefer that we request formal authorization before stopping galaxy-threatening catastrophes? Shun countered. Human doctrine prioritizes effectiveness over bureaucratic process when civilian lives are at stake. The assembled representatives exchanged glances. They had convened this session to assess whether humanity represented a threat to galactic stability. Instead, they were learning that human forces have been actively protecting that stability while allowing other species to take credit for the resulting peace. General Thaxmore voiced the obvious question. Ambassador, what does humanity want in return for these services? Chen's answer surprised everyone. Continued cooperation in building a more stable galaxy. Trade relationships that benefit all species. Scientific collaboration that advances everyone's capabilities, and the freedom to continue protecting innocents when they're threatened. That's all. General, human strategic planning operates on timescales measured in centuries. Short-term territorial gains that destabilize long-term prosperity don't serve our interests. Chancellor Melthara absorbed the implications. Humanity possessed military capabilities that could dominate the galaxy, but chose to use those capabilities to protect the existing order rather than replace it. Ambassador, what would happen if the coalition attempted to restrict human military activities? Chen's polite smile didn't waver. Chancellor, I hope we never need to find out. Human doctrine strongly prefers cooperative solutions to adversarial ones. The unspoken message was clear. Humanity would continue protecting galactic stability with or without coalition approval. The choice facing the galaxy's leaders was whether they wanted to be partners in that effort or obstacles to it. As the session concluded, representatives began to understand that they weren't dealing with just another military power seeking expansion. They were confronting a species that had redefined the strategic purpose of military force itself. 6 months after the emergency coalition session, Supreme Chancellor Melthara stood in the observation deck of the Joint Training Facility orbiting Kepler 186F, watching an unprecedented exercise unfold below. For the first time in galactic history, human special operations forces were conducting a public demonstration. The scenario was deliberately challenging. A hostage rescue operation in a multi-level facility with unknown interior layout, hostile forces of unknown number, and civilian casualties to be minimized. Coalition elite forces had attempted the same scenario during previous exercises, with mixed results. Beginning insertion phase, announced the human mission commander through the communication system. On the tactical display, Melthara watched 4 human soldiers approach the facility. Just 4. Coalition doctrine would have assigned at least 40 elite soldiers to the same mission. Chancellor, are you certain this is their elite unit? Asked General Thaxmore, who had become the Coalition's primary liaison for human military cooperation. Before Melthara could respond, Ambassador Chen spoke from her position at the observation platform's command station. General, the team below represents Delta Force, one of our special operations units. For soldiers, standard team size for this mission profile, Chen confirmed. More personnel would actually reduce effectiveness for this type of operation. The tactical display showed the human team moving with precision that defied understanding. They breached the facility's outer defenses in under 2 minutes, using techniques that bypassed security systems Coalition engineers had considered impenetrable. How are they moving so quickly? Admiral Corvex whispered. Training, Chen replied simply. Delta Force selection and training takes approximately 18 months. Physical conditioning, advanced marksmanship, close-quarters combat, hostage rescue techniques, foreign language proficiency, cultural adaptation, improvised weapons, explosive ordnance disposal, advanced communications, and psychological resilience. 18 months to produce soldiers who moved like extensions of each other's thoughts. On the display, the team flowed through the facility's corridors with seamless coordination, engaging hostile targets while avoiding civilian casualties with split-second precision. Team Alpha, hostiles neutralized in sections 1 through 4, reported the team leader. Proceeding to hostage location. Time elapsed, 12 minutes, announced the exercise coordinator. Coalition elite forces had required 3 hours to reach the same point, and that was with detailed facility blueprints. These humans were operating with no prior intelligence. Ambassador, Director Kethval said quietly, how many teams like this does humanity maintain? Shun considered the question. Director, that information relates to operational security. But I can tell you that special operations represent a small, but strategically significant portion of our military capability. Small meaning? Less than 1% of total military personnel, Chen replied. Special operations forces handle missions that conventional forces cannot accomplish, but conventional forces handle the majority of military requirements. The implication struck every observer. If human conventional forces exceeded galactic elite capabilities and special operations represented the pinnacle of human military development, then even a small number of such teams could influence galactic-scale events. Hostages secured, facility neutralized, reported the Delta Force team leader. Total mission time, 27 minutes. Chancellor Melthara felt her understanding of warfare shift fundamentally. Ambassador, how do these capabilities integrate with human strategic doctrine? That's an excellent question. Chancellor, Chen replied. Would you like to observe a strategic planning exercise? Within the hour, the observation group had transferred to a secure briefing chamber where human strategic planners were conducting a galaxy-wide threat assessment. The scale of their analysis stunned the Coalition representatives. Current modeling indicates 12 potential flashpoints across Coalition space, explained Colonel Peterson, the human strategic planning officer. Pirate organizations acquiring advanced weaponry, territorial disputes between member species, resource conflicts in border systems, and potential terrorist threats to civilian shipping. The holographic display showed the galaxy with highlighted regions indicating various threat levels. The detail exceeded anything Coalition intelligence had produced. How long have you been conducting this analysis? General Thaxmore asked. This particular assessment updates continuously, Colonel Peterson replied. We maintain strategic analysis for all regions where human interests or civilian safety might be affected. All regions. General, human strategic doctrine holds that instability anywhere eventually threatens stability everywhere, Peterson explained. Prevention requires comprehensive awareness and rapid response capabilities. Admiral Corvex studied the threat assessment. Colonel, how do you respond to these potential flashpoints? Depends on the specific threat, Peterson replied. Economic pressure, diplomatic intervention, intelligence sharing with local authorities, or direct action when civilian lives are in immediate danger. Direct action by whom? Appropriate assets based on mission requirements, Peterson said diplomatically. Ambassador Chen clarified. Admiral, human strategic response employs all elements of national power: diplomatic, economic, informational, and military. Military action represents one tool among many, used when other approaches are insufficient. Director Keth Val leaned forward. Ambassador, Coalition intelligence has identified unusual patterns in recent galactic events. Pirate organizations suddenly losing funding, terrorist cells abandoning planned operations, potential conflicts resolving through unexpected diplomatic breakthroughs. Are these patterns connected to human strategic activities? Chen's smile carried subtle pride. Director, human doctrine prioritizes preventing problems over solving them after they develop. Sometimes that requires discrete intervention. Discrete intervention by special operations forces? Among other methods, Chen confirmed. The realization struck Chancellor Melthara with startling clarity. For months, the coalition had been analyzing human military capabilities while missing the larger strategic picture. Human forces weren't just superior warriors. They were implementing a galaxy-wide stability strategy that prevented conflicts before they reached coalition attention. Ambassador, she said slowly, how long has humanity been conducting these preventive operations? Since we joined the coalition, Chen replied. Human strategic planning identified potential threats to galactic stability and began addressing them through appropriate channels. Without coalition oversight, Chancellor, would you prefer that we submit bureaucratic requests before preventing genocides or terrorist attacks? Chen asked politely. The question highlighted the fundamental difference between human strategic thinking and coalition administrative procedures. Humans acted based on strategic necessity, while coalition processes required consensus building that could take months to achieve. General Thaxmore voiced the concern they all shared. Ambassador, this level of strategic intervention suggests human influence extends throughout coalition space. How do we know your interventions serve galactic interests rather than human interests? General, that question assumes those interests are incompatible, Chen replied. Human strategic analysis indicates that galactic stability serves humanity's long-term interests better than any alternative scenario. But what if human interests and galactic interests diverged? Chen's expression became serious. General, human history includes extensive experience with short-sighted decisions that prioritized immediate advantage over long-term stability. We've learned that sustainable prosperity requires stable partners, not conquered territories. Admiral Corvex considered the implications. Ambassador, are you saying that human military capabilities exist to protect the coalition rather than replace it? Admiral, human military capabilities exist to protect innocent civilians and maintain interstellar stability, Chen corrected. The coalition serves those purposes effectively, so supporting it serves human strategic interests. And if the coalition stops serving those purposes, then humanity would find alternative methods to protect innocence and maintain stability, Chen replied without hesitation. The message was unmistakable. Human support for the coalition was conditional on the coalition's effectiveness in protecting civilian populations and maintaining galactic stability. If the coalition failed in those responsibilities, humanity would fulfill them independently. Chancellor Melthara felt the weight of this revelation. Humanity possessed the military capabilities to enforce galactic stability through conquest, but chose to maintain it through partnership. That choice created opportunity for continued cooperation, but also established clear expectations for coalition performance. Ambassador, what does humanity require from the coalition to continue this partnership? Chen consulted her strategic briefing pad. Continued cooperation in civilian protection, support for democratic institutions, fair trade practices, and collaborative scientific advancement. Also, understanding that human forces will continue preventing large-scale civilian casualties regardless of bureaucratic constraints. And in return, continued security assistance, strategic intelligence sharing, advanced technology transfers, and economic cooperation that benefits all coalition members, Chen replied. As the briefing concluded, Chancellor Melthara realized that the coalition's relationship with humanity had just been redefined. They weren't dealing with a member species seeking advantage within existing power structures. They were partnering with a species that had already established galactic-scale strategic dominance and chosen to exercise it benevolently. The choice facing the coalition was simple: work with humanity to protect galactic stability, or discover what methods humanity would employ to protect that stability without coalition cooperation. Looking at the strategic displays showing human forces quietly maintaining peace across dozens of star systems, Chancellor Melthara knew which choice served everyone's interests. The galaxy's most powerful military force had revealed itself not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. And that distinction would shape interstellar politics for generations to come.